Shalom, Shalom or peace. We are the ministry of the real truth that strives to bring you, the truth seeker, the real believer, in the one creator and the one true God, the real truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And we avoid any hype, fluff, or other BS, and won't attempt to pull the wool over your eyes. We look at the original, ancient, or very old biblical manuscripts in the old sacred scribal old tongue, Lishana Atika or Sapreya, of the Tab Eshret, which is the oldest sister language of the Tab Ivri, or the ancient Hebrew. And this is in order to bring you exactly what the scriptures originally written say, and mean, translated by a native born Aramaic speaking translator filmmaker from Bet Nahrein, Mesopotamia in Assyria, who left out any prejudice, bias, twistings, flavours, or his own ideas, because he was determined to translate all as close to what the original manuscripts are actually saying in the original language and the nearest English equivalent. Sometimes this proved hard, but he pulled it off. We compare these ancient or very old manuscripts in the sacred old scribal language to today's Americanized Bible versions, many used today, used by many Christians of the numerous Christian denominations worldwide, such as the NIV, ESV, RSV, Living Bible, Amplified Version, etc. We listen to the many theologians, evangelists, and Christian leaders, and the Christian followers, adherents of today, and research their many claims of fact, proofs, truths, evidence, and so forth, to see if they actually are. In that way, we can expose them if they are in error, contradictory. Their works are revisions, rewrites, which are corrupted, mistranslations, bad interpolations, or really bad transliterations, or complete lies. Today, we will begin to read you all the original ancient books of the Old Testament from the ancient, very old sacred scribal old tongue or language, Lishana Atika or Lishana Sapreya, of the ancient or very old Tab Eshri, sister language of Tab Ivri, or ancient or very old ancient Hebrew. Today's modern Aramaic is the Syriac, which is a derivative of the ancient Aramaic, and apparently wrong, according to a high priest of the original church of the East. The Hebrew, which is not the Kitab Eshri, but modern Israeli Hebrew, and the Greek, which many claim is the ancient Greek, ancient Old Greek, when it isn't. It's possibly from the Latinized form of Greek, not Attica or Koine Greek, which is should be or would be very akin to the ancient Tab Eshret or Assyrian Aramaic or the Aramaic, or translated into modern English or American English. If you find you like this idea, please feel free to subscribe to our channel. check that the notification bell is set up correctly so you won't miss out any of our upcoming related videos. Add a like, add comments in the comment section, then tell it all your family, friends, neighbours, strangers, members of the church about us, the ministry of the real truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So today we are going to begin with a little bit of history of the translator. We have covered this in other videos. This is the downed site of the translator Victor N. Alexander from Bet Nahrein with 15 years experience in translating these scriptures and filmmaking documentaries on Mesopotamian history, because he found that the West actually got it wrong, trying to say that these are demons, etc., when they weren't. I think they're like cherubims and they guarded certain palaces. They were winged cherubims, etc., not demons. Okay. So this was Victor N. Alexander's website, va.com, that was downed. It's been down for a few years. He's in the process of repairing it and putting it out. He ran into some problems. So here it states Men of Nineveh, that he shot a documentary at the Louvre Museum in the British Museum in 1976 on the history and artifacts of ancient Mesopotamia. Joshua, or Jesus, spoke about the men of Nineveh in Matthew chapter 12 verses 39 to 41. Jonah was sent there by the Lord to preach to the Ninevites. They converted to the true faith 1,000 years before his coming, and they were spared. Jesus in the New Testament said to the Pharisees, you will be judged. The Ninevites will rise and they'll be the ones to judge you, etc., etc. Okay. The Ninevites converted to the true faith 1,000 years before his coming, and they were spared before Christ's coming. At first, Victor N. Alexander's interest was only to film the great art of his ancestors, the Assyrian people of Mesopotamia, Bet Nahrein. That's where he was born. Then he began studying about the invention of writing, and that led him to the scriptures. He was amazed that Americans did not know about the fact that writing was invented in Mesopotamia and that Abraham came from the Ur of Chaldea. The picture is of him getting ready to shoot the scene with the two winged bulls in the Louvre Museum. These figures are not idols, as we mentioned. The Assyrians believed in the one true God from the start. The Aramaic language was first used in Asher, Nimrod and Nineveh from 800 BC. Yeah, as soon as Jonah went there and preached them, and they believed in the one true God of Jonah. So they converted, smashed all their idols, put on sackcloth, threw dust all over themselves, pulled their beards, even dressed up their animals in sackcloth and threw dust on them, and totally repented. And the king at the time wrote everything down that Jonah, or Yonah the dove, told him about the one true God, and then on clay tablets in their language, cuneiform, and then a library was created. They stored them all in there until 1900s or something, and when they were, because they got invaded, the library was destroyed, and Henry Layard and his friend, archaeologists, dug it up. They found it and dug it up and found 50,000 tablets, and they shipped it to the British Museum. And George Smith helped to translate it. There's so many fragments, so many broken pieces. It was very, very hard, but he had a part in it as well. So he says the picture here is of Victor N. Alexander getting ready to shoot the scene with the two winged bulls in the Louvre Museum. These figures are not idols. The Assyrians believed in the one true God from the start. The Aramaic language was first used in Asher, Nimrod and Nineveh. That's why he is a descendant. So he has the middle name Nimrod, not Isaac, and Nineveh is someone he tried to claim, from 800 BC. He studied the ancient Aramaic language from the pictograph stage through cuneiform, symbolic writing, up to modern Aramaic, modern vernacular. His translation work is authentic. He has spent most of his life studying it. This has become his life's work. Okay. The tree of life in the Trinity. The ancient Aramaic scriptures are now accessible through this translation project, or his translation project. There you could read the words of Maran Eosha Meshiga, our Lord Jesus the Messiah, and the sacred writings of the prophets. They are translated from the original language of the scriptures. As a native Aramaic speaking translator, in other words, as we stated, he found a way to revive that long dead language, because there was no one in that area supposedly that spoke it, maybe older people, but they couldn't speak English, so they couldn't translate it. Okay, so a modern vernacular was made, but he found a way to revive it and translate those old manuscripts that he got hold of. Ancient Aramaic is the oldest form of the language. It's very old, so he tries to make it clear, right? He's not talking about the modern, he's talking about the ancient, so it includes the words very old. He's talking about the original ancient Aramaic, the oldest form of the language. This is the language Joshua, Jesus spoke 2,000 years ago. This language of ancient Mesopotamia and the Jewish people, the ancient Aramaic. He actually spoke a form of it, of the Kitab Ashri, or Ashrid, Galilean Aramaic. This is the language that modern day theologians refer to as Aramaic, or the language of Aram, because if you take off this "in" suffix, right, it's A, is the language of the forefather Aram, okay, who's in Genesis, or Breetah or Genesis in the genealogical list, when Noah comes out of, and his sons come out of the ark, right, and they all start getting together and having families and then descendants. It states so and so is the forefather of so and so, which leads up to the Russians, the Germans, etc., etc. This forefather Aram was the forefather of the Arameans, and they spoke the language that he spoke, the language of Aram, right? And this is a loan word of the Greek and the Latin, which indicates it belonged, or these people were the possessors of that language, and so forth. Victor and Alexander simply identified this language more clearly than the American churches and the Western translators of the Bible. It is wrong to call this language merely Aramaic. Aramaic is a modern language, like modern Hebrew, Arabic, Persian, etc. Most languages of the Middle East and the rest of the world, in fact, have evolved from this first language, the first ever spoken on earth. Supposedly God spoke it to the people, and they spoke it to each other at the Tower of Babel. You have to go do your own personal research on that and find out if they actually did. Therefore, the language of the scriptures should be identified as ancient or very old Aramaic. It is necessary to call it ancient, otherwise everyone can deny that the scriptures were originated in this language, the language that the creator of the universe and his son spoke. This is the language of Adam, Noah, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, and David. It has gone through thousands of years of evolution, so over time it's changed. Okay? Mishmash with others probably, as happens. Right? The ancient Aramaic language of the scriptures is no longer a spoken language, and the last time it was used as a literary language was in 1300 AD. Today, the ancient Aramaic remains only as a liturgical language. There are a number of Eastern churches that still use this language in their liturgy, as in the Mason Syrian, as I was informed by a Syrian. In order for the people of the world to start learning about the scriptures truth, everyone must come to understand that the Bibles being disseminated today are mostly translated from the English language versions, or they are conformed to the Protestant and Catholic Bibles from various languages. So that verifies the claim by the guy Brian and the video on YouTube, the American Bible Society and their lies, and it all came from one source. Okay, and these people here came from one source. Right, they translated the ancient Hebrew into it was translated into Greek, and then they translated into Latin, Old English, Middle English, or Shakespeare speak, and then down through the ages into modern English or American English. These people were under them in the Reformation era. They were under the boot heel of these people. Okay, even though they did the Reformation stand, they still remained faithful to this particular church power, the Roman Catholic Church, because that's how they were. If they got their head locked off or something like that, that's because they were going against their dictates. Okay. Like Martin Luther, what happened to that guy? Did he just die of old age? If he did, he was still a Catholic to the end. He never renounced it, as far as we know. So, the Bibles, people got to understand that the Bibles being disseminated today, put out today, distributed, are mostly translated from the English language versions, or they are conformed to the Protestant and Catholic Bibles from various languages. They're conformed to their dictates. Right? This translation, the Aramaic scriptures, the original Aramaic scriptures, ancient, old, very old, is the only one that has been made from the ancient Aramaic scriptures, or very old Aramaic scriptures, without prejudice. It is made available to you from this website. So here's a statement here for any naysayers that say, oh yeah, well, you know, most translators have their own prejudice, bias, add their own flavour, twist it, add their own views, opinions, etc. Well, this guy is verifying there, and further on in his statements, that he did it without prejudice, bias, adding his own flavour, or twist, opinion, or views. Translation notes. When the Roman Church established its authority in the West, it abandoned the Eastern scriptures that were recorded by the apostles in the ancient Aramaic language. From the start, when the Roman Emperor Constantine ordered the expulsion of the ancient Church of the East from Asia Minor, the Western scriptures were wrongfully drawn from the Greek Septuagint, Old Testament, and the Greek original translations of the New Testament. This is how the Western churches abandoned the apostolic faith. Only the Eastern churches and the Orthodox churches retained some of the original apostolic doctrines. It goes on about the internet reaching a saturation point, which is quite interesting. Origins of the languages, or the language of the scriptures. There are now some people that think Greek is the language of the New Testament. There is a huge amount of information on the internet on the subject. Victor and Alexander was trying to deal with this issue through Aramaic video and audio files that he posted on his website. By explaining the Lord's Prayer word for word, he was trying to awaken the readers to consider the actual teachings of Yeshua, Mashiach, or Jesus the Messiah. The first civilization book was originally a script proposal for the documentary which he shot in the Louvre Museum in Paris, France, and the British Museum in London, England. There is an avalanche of information on the internet presenting contradictory studies regarding Aramaic. None of this information is by native Aramaic speaking individuals. Today, there are millions of Aramaic speaking people. They speak modern Aramaic or Syriac. This is not what he called ancient, or calls ancient Aramaic, or very old Aramaic. Ancient Aramaic is the Asherite language of Nineveh at the time of Yeshua Mashiach, or Jesus the Messiah. He has studied this language all his life, and he's translating the Old Testament at that point. He was translating it, and then he was planning to make movies about the subject of the origins of the faith in Yeshua Mashiach, or Jesus the Messiah's name. Evangelion comes from the Aramaic word meaning he reveals. How Galion. In Greek, it has been transliterated as, what's the Greek there? And pronounced as Evangelion. This has also been translated into Latin and all the Western languages as Evangelion, with the explanation that it means good news. But in the original ancient Aramaic, or very old Aramaic, it really means he reveals. That is Maria reveals. Maya reveals. It's Lord God, or Master God. How can someone preach about the faith of Maran Yeshua Mashiach, Jesus the Messiah, when they do not know the truth or the basis for the scriptures as preached by Maran Yeshua Mashiach? See, he came in the title of his father. He came as Maria Yeshua Mashiach, or Maran Yeshua Mashiach. It's the title of his father. His father never had a name, and he had titles. In the Hebrew, you have the adjectives, which are characteristic attributes. We've got the strong one, the benevolent one, the powerful one, all-seeing, omnipresent, omnipotent, etc., etc. Okay, so that's a short introductory video, so you know what you're in for, and that's about the first civilization. There is the ancient Sumerian winged disc icon, the tree of life. Some people here, priests, okay, because these people, the Mesopotamians, are supposed to be descendants of the Sumerians, or alternatively, as we have read historically, they adopted and adapted from the Akkadians adopted and adapted from the Sumerians, and then the Babylonians adopted from them, adopted and adapted, and then the Assyrians, and so forth. This continual cycle. But yeah, they are claiming to be descendants. Right? But yeah, the Sumerians apparently weren't Semites. They weren't Semitic, but the Akkadian and Babylonian, the Assyrians, perhaps, and the Aramaeans, etc., Hebrews, Jews, and so forth, were Semitic peoples. They're a mixture. That's why you've got Semite, right? They're a mix of different people who wandered around desert regions and so forth. Okay, so we're going to end that one there, and in the next video we will move on to the ancient Breetah, or Genesis in English.